All right, we're going to call to order the April 16th meeting of the West Sacramento City Council Redevelopment Successor Agency and Financing Authority. We're going to begin tonight, as we do each week, with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'd like to invite our guests to join the council and staff in the pledge, which tonight will be led by Premier Employee and Senior Deputy City Clerk Janet Chapin. All right, the council did not meet in closed session this evening, so we're going to proceed directly to item 1A, which is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the City Council. As is noted on our agenda, state law precludes us from taking action or having a discussion about items brought up under item 1A, but it is an important opportunity for a public forum. We do ask that anyone wishing to address the council on this or any other item this evening to please fill out one of the yellow cards. It's available near the front door and turn it into the city clerk. In front of the clerk is a timer that we use to make sure that everyone gets a chance to be heard. And so we ask that all comments be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Also in front of the clerk is a flip chart, and that chart simply indicates which agenda item the council is currently considering. We take the yellow cards all the way up to the conclusion of the staff report on any particular agenda item. So once the staff report is done and the council questions or discussion or public testimonies begin, we don't take any additional cards. So please try to get your card in as early as possible. We also recognize that for some folks, speaking in public can cause some anxiety, and so we do request that there not be any boos or catcalls or even applause or other demonstration, and then we try to maintain a civil discourse in the chambers. So with that, item 1A, Madam Clerk, we have no request to speak under item 1A? I can't see you, actually. None? Okay. All right, so we'll proceed to item 1B, which is council communications and assignments. I do have assignments to propose for the various liaison boards and commissions that we serve on, with the a seating of Councilmember Sandine. Oh, by the way, welcome to your first full meeting on the City Council. Councilmember Ledesma is on work business in Washington, D.C. this evening and won't be joining us. All right, so I'd like to appoint Councilmember Sandine. There's no changes for anyone else other than Councilmember Ledesma has one. So for Councilmember Sandine to the Port District Commission, to the Executive Board for Universal Preschool for West Sacramento, to the Water Resources Association Board, replacing Mr. Ledesma as the alternate for the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, JPA, appointment as the alternate for the Yolo County Transportation District Board of Directors, and as the liaison for the Youth Commission, with the notation that maybe your first duty ought to be some thinking about what we ought to do about the Youth Commission, which we have not appointed for a couple of years now, to determine whether that we should revisit that structure. In addition, appoint Mr. Ledesma as the primary member of the Yolo County Transportation District Board of Directors, and Mr. Ledesma to the City County 2x2. So that should rebalance the various assignments, roughly 6, 7, or 8 assignments each for each of us.
You can get me off last one.
You said if you.
I know it comes through a different process.
Yeah. Yep.
Just give me a bad time.
All right, so those are the proposed assignments. Is there a motion to approve them?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, those are the assignments. Thank you. So are there other reports or communications under item 1B? Any member of the council?
I have one.
Mr. Kristoff.
A week ago, SAC Regional met, and the major element that we're working with right now is what we call the Echo Water Project Draft Environmental Report. It came out, and so it is a draft, and it will require some additional comments, and I forget when the expiration time is, but at the same time, this is a very important project for not only Sacramento Regional, but for the entire region, because this is the project that builds this $2 billion plant that we are going to have to build in order to meet state, federal water requirements that have come up. So I don't know when our city will be getting the draft EIR, but we'll make sure it's fairly soon so we have time to look at it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Christoph. I would only report that today the president, Mayor Johnson was sworn in as the new president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors a couple months early, since the mayor, the prior president, who's the mayor of Mesa, Arizona, is stepping down to run for governor of Arizona. So that swearing in took place at a ceremony earlier in the day. In his inaugural address for the U.S. Conference of Mayors, he did highlight a lot of priorities in the region that he wants to make national priorities, but two that were mentioned were levees, national attention on both levee funding, but also the processes of levees, levee construction, and port modernization. He mentioned 5 or 6 port cities in the country that have this as a priority, all mega ports, and then us. So this is going to be a very significant benefit to the region, and particularly to West Sacramento, because we're the primary partner. We're his primary partner at the Conference of Mayors, and so our ability to leverage influence at the federal level is going to be quite significant as a result of his election to the presidency there. So it's good news. Right, item 1C, we have no appointments this evening, but we will have appointments to all of these commissions, we anticipate on the 30th. So the Parks and Community Services Commission, I should note, that's an expected vacancy. The seat's not currently vacant, but we expect it to be, so are requesting applications at this time. All right, that brings us to item 2, which is presentation. We did the item 2 at a ceremony earlier, which is presentation of Employee and Team of the Year awards. So item 3 is presentation of the Yolo County Community Health Assessment. Ms. Richardson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we should have some representatives from the county here that are going to be giving the presentation. They have a PowerPoint for us. You can give those to the clerk, and she'll give those to you.
Here, this is a brief PowerPoint, right? Remember our PowerPoint guidelines?
Hi, thank you for allowing me to attend this evening and tell you a little bit about the Healthy YOLO project.
Where's that button? Didn't come up. Hopefully. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit very briefly about the Healthy YOLO project and the community health assessment that we just completed recently. Healthy YOLO is a collaborative participatory approach, and we intend to engage the community members so that they can have a voice in addressing public health issues in their community, and ultimately to improve the quality of life for those in Yolo County. And it is a public health effort, which means that it's proactive and preventive, and it focuses on the population as a whole versus the individual. And what we want to do is move upstream and start dealing with some of the root causes of poor health, because if we wait until the consequences of poor health, it's oftentimes too late. As I mentioned earlier, our community health assessment is online, and we're asking the public to review the document and also comment on it. We conducted a survey of over 900 individuals in Yolo County, asking them to rate the quality of life in their community, to prioritize health issues in their community that affect health, and to tell us some of the strengths and policies that they would support. We also collected over 130 health indicators in Yolo County, and we conducted a work session with local public health representatives to rate how well we're conducting our responsibilities and duties, and we also conducted another work session on the forces of change that may affect health in our community. The community health assessment is online. It'll be open for public comment for the month of April. You can select the comment button up in the upper right-hand column, or you can email us at healthyyolo.org. And to address the demographic and geographic diversity of Yolo County, we divided the county up into 7 regions so that we can focus in on the particular aspects of each community. Today I'll talk about the East region, which includes West Sacramento and the surrounding areas. But I did want to talk a little bit about some of the social determinants of health, and these are the major factors that affect health. A lot of these are about the conditions in which people are born, live, work, and play, and they affect a wide range of health functioning, quality of life issues, and risk factors as well. And so we want to pay particular attention to these health determinants. Some of the population growth that the East region has seen over the past 10 years, from 2000 to 2010, they had a 54% growth, which accounted for about roughly half of the county increase over that same time period. And what we're seeing is that the age group from 25 to 34 increased by over 100%. And it's important to understand these changes in population and the specific age group, because each age group has specific needs that need to be addressed. Some of the younger children have also, those age groups have also increased as well in the community. As far as the diversity of race and ethnicity, the East region is the most diverse region in the county, and the Hispanic, non-Hispanic ratio is roughly the same as the Yolo County region. Languages, we also looked at that, and we found that 37% of the people in the Eastern region speak another language other than English, and 18% total speak English less than very well, and this may cause barriers to healthcare access and communicating with the medical providers. We also looked at the Washington Unified School District and found that 20% are English learners, meaning they're not competent in reading and writing, which is on average with the county. Household income is a major determinant of health. We see that as far as all people in households, they're roughly around the same as the county. Unfortunately for families and children, it's slightly higher than the county, with 27% of the children living in poverty. And with educational attainment, the people with education are more likely to live longer, to experience better health outcomes, and practice health-promoting behaviors. And we see that in the East region, roughly of those 25 years and older, 19% have less than a high school diploma. Their graduation rate is roughly about 85%, which is equivalent to the county rate as well. And poverty and income are tied together. There's an inverse relationship, so that if you can see that in the East region, those people 25 years and older that do not have a high school diploma, 26% of those live in poverty, compared to 6% who have a bachelor's degree or higher. So they are correlated with one another. When we surveyed the Yolo County residents, we asked them to rate Yolo County overall as far as quality of life is concerned, and then we asked them to rate their local community. We collected 771 responses for Yolo County, and roughly 50% rated the quality of life in Yolo County as good or excellent. And in the East region, we had 205 responses. Roughly about 46% rated that as excellent or good. We asked them to rate their overall health as well. In the East region, 203 survey respondents provided information, and you can see it is similar to the county ratings, with a few of the survey respondents rating it, their overall health is just okay. We also asked them to rate the strengths of their community, and this is what they call a wordle. So the larger the word, the more times it was mentioned. by the survey respondents, and we had 138 respondents for this, and they mentioned schools, parks, community groups, and churches. They also mentioned a lot about the characteristics of West Sacramento, such as that it's a friendly place, that it's growing, it's up and coming, and that there's unity in the community as well. We also asked them to rate health issues that most affect their community. We had 900 people respond with nearly 2,700 health issues selected, and they selected 3 health issues out of 20 health issues. And the top 3 were obesity, mental health, and diabetes. Obesity with almost more than 100 selections than the second choice. We also took a look at the health issues that West Sacramentans felt most affected their community as well. There were 215 responses to this. They felt obesity was the health issue that most affected their community, along with diabetes and alcoholism, which was ranked 6th overall, but 3rd in West Sacramento, and then 4th with cancer as well. We asked them to mention some policies that they would support. They were for health education promotion at health fairs, building a recreational facility, parks and running trails, and they wanted to be involved in community decision-making processes and to increase the representation. The next steps that we'll do is that we're asking everybody to comment on the community health assessment. It's a draft right now. We'll take everybody's input and finalize that document. And we're also doing community forums where we'll share the information from the community health assessment and then ask the community members to identify strategic issues. And those are the root causes that affect health outcomes. We'll take all of that information, find some commonalities, and then formulate the goals and strategies to address those health issues and tie in the strengths of the community in that. And then we'll develop action plans, which are objectives with timelines and measurable components to them. And I just wanted to open this up to any questions that council may have at this time.
So when we say action plan, actions by whom?
This would be a collaborative effort with Yolo County Health Department leading it. We would be working with other community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, city councils, and the like.
Do we sign up to do this, or?
No, we can, you can keep in contact with us, and we'll keep in contact with you, and we'll be sharing our results. We'll have a health improvement plan.
Previously, I mean, did we sign up as a city to participate in? Or here's why. So I'm really interested in the social determinants of health, but also the physical determinants as well in the community, and they tend not to be the things that people identify when asked, right? So I am supportive of surveys, but within the scope of what they can accomplish, and issues around land use, density, transit services, I mean, the sorts of things where there's a lot of solid research on, rarely come up in surveys, right? The surveys, when we ask people think about their own moments of, okay, parks, and those are very important. We know that, right, because we run the park system, but it can be misleading to allow surveys to drive it, right? So that I want to be, as we think about what our approaches are around rethinking what the city's role in health really is, that we have a focus, because the area where we have the biggest impact on health in a large measure is in land use, in determining how much people can walk and drive it. And it's not solely a function of whether there's a trail, but whether they live 5 miles away from anything else, and a car becomes the only option. Those are very fundamental, and so that's why I ask whether we've agreed to be part of some coalition already, or whether the county is hoping that we will that the assessment will cause us to want to be a partner.
You haven't been a part of it. We are hoping that you will, and also I think We did ask in the survey some of the environmental factors and behavioral and social and economic circumstances that they felt affected health outcomes as well. So we did kind of take in land use and some other aspects to that. But I think when we go in to identify the strategic issues, that's when we start to peel away those layers and we start to identify certain land use aspects.
Okay, it's a subject that is methodology, right? So if I have over time learned that doing land use planning simply by surveying is a very bad idea, because in the same way that trying to get to deal with your personal obesity by making decisions one at a time on whether I want cheesecake or gelato is also a bad idea, right? Mm-hmm. You have to stop yourself from calling upon yourself to make all these little decisions in between in order to get to that big outcome. And so when we ask people by surveys or community meetings, what kind of land use do you want? What we hear back is, don't crowd me, so no density. I want to be far away from everybody. I want to be able to drive easily into a very walkable restaurant district with lots of life and activity, and those are not the same thing, right? So it's become more and more clear to me that what people say they want when we ask them, what do you want your community to really be like, is not the consequence of what we get if we say, okay, what do you think about density? What do you think about parking? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And so the approach that takes a micro-survey methodology towards a larger scale problem with the assumption that reductionism is going to lead you to that outcome, or that any individual person, including any of us, have the overall comprehensive strategy in mind is a mistake. And so it's not that it's not useful, but it cannot be the fundamental driver of an action plan.
No,
the scope
this
of
is
it.
one aspect of it. We had one survey, but we are, collecting other information from elsewhere. I mentioned the other work sessions and health indicators that we've collected, and we all will be working with other city councils and other agencies as well, and looking at what has been done, what has been successful, what are some of the best practices, and so on and so forth. It's not going to be solely driven upon a survey or several surveys, but we do want to have the community members participate and have a voice in this as well.
Right.
And have them be a
and
part
I
of
think
the
you heard this in
process.
Winters last night, or Winters as well, from their city council. We are the community has a set of processes and structures to do that. And so I personally get nervous when folks from somewhere else, the county, come in and say, hey, we're here to empower your citizens and to change your representation and all of that. I mean, the goals I share, but tread carefully in terms of how you see your role coming, the county's role in coming in to save us and our citizens from ourselves, because we have legitimate indigenous decision-making processes for all of that, and including ways of engaging community members that are designed to respect the diversity and the balance and the multiple aspirations that our community has. Some that are directly about health, others that are indirect. But I've been through enough of these building healthy communities efforts across the state and elsewhere to be to have some caution about how they often don't respect the actual local conditions on the ground in their zeal to think that they are somehow rescuing citizens that are disconnected from government.
And that's not our intent, and we would like to work with you in a collaborative effort.
Councilmember Sandine.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I agree with you. I actually was on the website today and looked at the methodology and the survey instrument just because I was interested in knowing more. I think you have some great points. I think this is more about a problem statement, and I think that the solutions have to happen within the municipalities, and that's probably why you're going out. We're East Yolo, but West Sacramento, so I was looking through that today. I saw there's a YouTube piece that is a 2.5 minute or so that just kind of summarizes things. So I do think it starts a conversation, but I think it needs to come back for our discussion deliberations about some of the how we actually make these changes.
Mr. Christoph.
This has really been an issue for the city of West Sacramento for a number of years. in your equation and how you are analyzing some of the things that would be good for West Sacramento, has a hospital ever surfaced? Because a number of people would really like to see I'll just say it, Sutter or Kaiser or whatever it is, locate along the river in West Sacramento.
Well, we haven't gone that far.
You haven't gone that far, okay.
No, we're still looking at the data and some of the outcomes and factors, yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, that brings us to the consent agenda, which is items 4 through 8. Are there any items that any member of the council wishes to remove, or any items for separate question or comment? Or a motion?
Second?
It's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson and seconded by Mr. Christoph. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item 9, which is continuation of a public hearing to discuss projects eligible for grant funds and consideration of Resolution 14-12 authorizing an application to the State of California Local Housing Trust Fund Program. And the city manager is requesting that we continue the public hearing until May 14th. So without objection, that will be the order. That brings us into item 10, which is public hearing and first reading of ordinance 14-4 regarding changes to the inclusionary housing program. And the city manager is requesting that we conduct the public hearing on this one. So we're going to proceed and turn to Mr. Huerta.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We're here this evening to seek approval of ordinance 14-4, I'm sorry. This ordinance was brought to you in a workshop format at the March 19th City Council meeting. The ordinance makes important amendments to the inclusionary housing program. These amendments have been designed primarily to respond to current housing market conditions, as well as the elimination of redevelopment tax increment, which historically was the city's main funding source for its affordable housing activities. Staff has attempted to respond to the comments that were raised at the March workshop, and we have summarized the additional revisions that we have made to the ordinance in attachment 1 of the staff report. We've amended the ordinance to also conform with Program 1.2 of the recently adopted housing element. So again, this evening we're asking the council for approval in first reading of ordinance 14-4. I'm not planning to go into much detail on the additional amendments, but I'll be more than glad to answer any questions that the council may have.
Other questions for staff at this time? Mr. Christoph.
Yeah, I do. The in lieu of fee portion of this, can the in lieu of fee be spent for projects like Delta Lane?
Correct. The intent of the in lieu fee is for that funding to go into the Housing Trust Fund program. And funds from that Housing Trust Fund program would go for any housing activities that the city would undertake, including projects like Delta Lane, infrastructure in support of affordable housing, things of that nature.
Just a public hearing, right?
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson.
Yeah, maybe just on the issue of the, one of the comments on the deviations or the alternatives was to go to the Planning Commission, and it looks like everything now is put at the City Council level. What's the rationale for not having the Planning Commission go through and vet that? And so we're provided with the comments at that level before it gets to us, or is an effort to streamline that a bit, or?
Yeah, the comment was primarily that they wanted to have some public input. The Planning Commission was just an example that they provided. We felt that the council was more appropriate for those types of decisions. Obviously, we could consider the Planning Commission instead. At this point, the staff is recommending that the council be the entity that approves those alternatives.
In the original version of this, the workshop version, you had originally proposed withdrawing the
administrative.
council from that and having that being delegated to the city manager. Isn't that right?
Correct.
So this
We
is-
were
this-
proposing to have those alternatives approved administratively by the city manager.
All right. Okay, great, thank you. Then we'll open the public hearing on item 10. We have one request to speak on this by Scott White from the North State BIA. We also have a letter in the record from the Sacramento Housing Alliance.
Every dollar that fee goes up, that eventual home price for the future home buyer goes up, and we're in a fragile market still. I know there's a lot of positive articles about things jump starting, but we're off life support, so it's really we're gradually moving up. So every dollar the fees go up, it hurts that recovery. So with that said, we hope you move forward tonight. We thank you for all your input at the workshop, thank your staff, and we think this goes in the right direction tonight. So thank you so much, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. All right, that's the only request we had for this item, so we'll close the public hearing and return it to the council. I'm certainly encouraged that we've got both. A lot of work's gone into this over a lot of time, but to have both the Housing Alliance, and the Housing Advocates, and the BIA in accord, at least through us, is definitely a significant step forward. I think the comments, the council feedback from the workshop has all been reflected in here. The fee level, I think the council's all very sensitive to the overall impact of fees on the development climate, economic development climate as well. In this case, just like we figure out how much will it cost us to provide the roads and the bridges and the sewer and everything else that's needed for our projected level of growth, and then we have to assign that out to all the various development projects, or otherwise we can't build the road and the bridge and the sewer and the water system. And we then, where we can, we look for ways to provide, find grants or other subsidies to reduce that. But we have to set the base level at what is cost to deliver that infrastructure, and that's the same in this case. The analysis that's been done. We didn't ask staff to come back with 5,600. I think we would like it to be 4,900 or less also, but we want it to be the right level. It needs to be the right level that's actually going to be able to deliver on our commitment that we are, as part of this process, we're taking responsibility for making the affordable housing happen. Relieving that from the development community, but it has to be that we get the resources in order to make that a reality. So, as we proceed, if we are able to identify the original staff report, I think in the workshop said, we've set this fee on an assumption that we'll get some grants, and this report takes a different approach at our request, which was, let's set the fee at the level it needs to be, and then if we get those grants. Then we can either provide a fee subsidy or revisit the fee level, but we need to at least start with what the true fee needs to be. So I appreciate the staff's work to get that trued up. Mr. Christoph.
Yeah, Ro, one of the comments I saw in here too, it says, current housing market conditions allow for the production of market rate units, affordable, moderate income buyers. In the past, affordable sale prices were designed for moderate income inclusionary units and were very close to the market rate sale price, which made market rate income units difficult to market. And why would that be?
It made the moderate income units difficult to market because they were very close to what market rate pricing was.
Okay?
So when a buyer has an option of buying, and this is feedback that we had received from developers, you know, when a buyer is looking at a
I
unit, and the difference is fairly small, most of the time they're going to be going for that market rate unit that does not come with the restrictions that we have on those inclusionary units. So they found those moderate income restricted units more difficult to sell into market because they were priced fairly close to what a market rate unit was. And again, we're only talking about those moderate income units because moderate income is up to 120%. So the income for those units and thus the price is significantly higher than, say, a low or a very low income unit.
So in the context of inclusionary housing, if you are going to have market rate housing, why would you even include inclusionary market rate housing and just have it as market rate?
Correct, and that's why we are proposing, at least at this time, to only focus on restricting very low and low because in the current housing market,
Okay.
moderate income units are being developed by the market. In the future, if we do see a need to change that, you know, we will be coming back to the council
Yeah,
to
right.
revisit
We
that.
revisit that, I see that.
But again, at least currently and probably for the next few years, that would be the case. It will also depend on how those income limits increase. They do change every year, so we have to adjust that pricing on an annual basis.
Thank you.
Pro Tem Johannesson.
Yeah, Raul, I'd like to also thank you and staff on putting this together, and obviously it was a great job at outreach by you, being able to get the housing advocates and the builders kind of coming to an agreement on something that looks workable in the future, because I think it's very positive. We need to have some mechanism to build housing of all levels in our city. You know, the way the state's policy is going is really to continue to support urbanization, continue to support transit-oriented projects. And this really helps us set up to do that, and not only to do that in terms of funding, but just to provide a better environment of what we're trying to do, you know, down in particularly the dense urban development around the riverfront. So thank you all for working on this.
All right. Then is there a motion? Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson.
I'll move the staff recommendation to waive the first reading and read by title number only, ordinance 14-4, amending the inclusion housing ordinance, and inform the audience that the second reading and adoption of ordinance 14-4 is scheduled for April 30th, 2014.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Thank you. Item 11 is a presentation of the quarterly budget update. Mr. Wright, Mr. Sharma.
There we go. So this is our third quarter budget update, as we've been trying to do, meet on a more regular basis just to keep the council apprised as to the status of the budget. the last one we did on consent, but as we prepare for mid-budget adjustments here, staff thought it would be important to actually have a little bit of a presentation to sort of set the table for what will come in June. So first, the agenda. As you can see, we're going to do a quick review of the assumptions that we have in our budget. Then we'll go through 4 of the major funds. We tend to always look at the general fund, and then often Public Works Engineering, Community Development are other funds we take a quick look at. And then we're going to do a little Measure K base because staff needs some at least general guidance from council before we look at the full Measure K proposals. And then we're going to just take a short look ahead at fiscal year 14-15. So the assumptions, as you may recall, are 2% property tax increase, 1.8 sales tax, use of about $432,000 in one-time funds to balance the budget and fully fund the OPEB. Staff, as we always do before each quarter, meets with the county assessor to determine if we're still on track on property taxes. We did that last week. We're comfortable that 2% is still a number we can reach, although there still are some significant appeals out there, which we'll talk about in a second. Sales tax, our consultant, again, we met, reconfirmed that we're going to hit that number easily, even with the higher estimate that we made, and so that's good news. First, taking a quick look at the general fund. I think the important things here, and I have to put my glasses on so I can read my own notes. You can see that for property tax, we have our 50% is where we should be. We're at 53. Sales tax, we should also be at 50. We just have 2 quarters. We're at 58, so that's very good. Overall, we're about 620,000 above. Our projections are that we'll be about 620,000 above budget for our revenues, so that's good news. For expenses, again, continued good news. We should be at 75% on personnel costs, and we're at 68. So the department heads are doing an excellent job maintaining our conservative spending. And so we're about $550,000 below, projected to be below on our expenses. So that's good news. And the bottom line impact of that is we will not have to use the $432,000 in one-time funds to balance the budget, and we should end up the year about $320,000 in the black. First year we've been in the black in 5 or 6 years, so that's very good news. It's not a significant amount of money. $300,000 can go very quickly, but that's good news. So that's the general fund. Taking a quick look at Public Works Engineering. You can see that the service charges are a little low. We still have $135,000 that we have not received from Caltrans for the bridge work, Pioneer Bluff Bridge. Well, it's not the Mike McGowan Bridge now, I guess would be the proper name. We're still a little bit low in those service charges. We're going to be about $171,000 projected below our revenues. But again, the good news is we're going to be about $179,000 below on our expenditures. So our expenditures are at least causing us to project that we'll be about $8,000 better, so not significant. And you can see the numbers still in the red. The budget had us $90,000 in the red, but we're only going to be $82,000 in the red. The larger number at the bottom, just by way of reminder, is during the very, very bad times, council made lots of cuts, but we didn't want to cut to the point where we couldn't do business. And so there was some general fund support for Public Works Engineering to keep work going. And so that's money that hasn't gone up in the last couple of years, but they haven't been able to pay it back yet. But we keep that on the books. So Public Works Engineering, all in all, starting to flatten out. Next will be community development. So again, our community development, you can see on the licenses and permits, we're projecting really being way over budget. They are working very hard. If you go to the second floor, you'll see that we are really starting to crank out some work. So that's looking good. About $90,000 over budget is the projection. Expenditures, and I think it's a lot of this has to do with work on general plan and lots of people that are trying to really crank up some work there. So we're projecting that we're going to be a little bit over currently on our expenditures, but so we're not going to be 50,000 in the black, but we're still 5,000 in the black, and that's a huge plus. You can see the bottom number of 1.7 million. This is a department that took a huge hit during the recession, and obviously has a debt they're going to have to pay back to the general fund, but we're in the black now and moving in the right direction. So that's community development. Next, Measure K. There will be a full Measure K report with the scorecard that will come to you in either May or June. And this is just where we want some direction from council as to some thoughts staff has, because Measure K, like our general fund, is starting to really benefit from the increase in sales tax. And so we are projecting about 400,000 in the plus for the Measure K, and we think that number could go up. One of the challenges we've had with Measure K that the mayor and council has pointed out at budget time has been, at some point, Measure K money needs to support streetcar, and we've obviously been committing all of the money to various other sources that are in that scorecard. So staff is considering and recommending to the council that we freeze the Measure K at its base, base is not the right word, at its current level that we've budgeted for this year, and that all of the excess, the 400,000, go to the streetcar. And as that money increases with sales tax, that we would put that money away. Just looking for some direction if that seems to make sense or if there wants to be some different direction. Obviously, the council will make that decision when we give a presentation and more fully.
What are the projections that you have for streetcar expenses moving forward after this? I mean, are they?
I guess if I can answer the question a bit indirectly, we have, under the city manager's direction, we have a steering committee and a staff committee that is looking at streetcar, 106, IFD, flood, all of the major projects, and we're working collaboratively, very much in a team of multi-departments, to line out over the next 30 years the needs each year and our revenues for each year and how we're going to be able to map those out. And if you recall, when we gave you a brief presentation on this a couple of meetings ago, we're fine, except for we need about 25 million. Natish, is it in 4 years or 5 years where we have the blip? Capital blip.
Would be in 40 year.
Fourth year. So 4 years from now, we're going to have to borrow, and we're looking at various options of how we're going to borrow to fill the gap where we won't have the income to pay for streetcar, but we'll have certainly borrowing capacity because of Measure K.
So will we have a line of credit?
It will be. We're looking at various options. I don't know which option we're going to use. We're going to explore every option possible, see which is the most efficient, obviously, and bring that to the council. So with that, I will answer any questions that the council may have.
14, 15.
Oh, I'm sorry. That just reminded me I missed slide 8. So let me just give you the quick summary on slide 8. So the good news opportunities is we're going to have a carryover balance, about 300,000. We're not going to have to use 400,000 in one-time funds. Looks like, based upon our conversation with a consultant, that number in the black is going to move up to somewhere between 5 and could be higher, but that's our conservative estimate, and not have to use the one-time funds. Again, if you add that all together, it's $1 million, and the council has given direction of how we should look to come back and recommend adjustments, and we will follow those recommendations. And $1 million doesn't actually go as far as you would like, but those are positive. The short-term challenges are we have an increase in workers' comp liability. We have an increase in our general liability. We obviously have some public safety strategies that the council has directed us to undertake that we have to figure out how to fund, and we will use some of that excess money. I'm sure that will be one of our recommendations at budget time, to use some of that money to help. And then we have some additional parks that we've built that we have to make sure we remember to maintain. So those are sort of our short-term issues that we'll be talking to you about at budget time. The long-term challenges that this council is very well aware of, that we have to keep reminding ourselves, unfortunately, is we've got the PERS increases for 6 years, from 15-16 to 20-21, that we have to get through, and they're going to be significant. Healthcare costs, I mean, those are a problem with private, public sector, doesn't matter. We hope that that the changes will start to have a positive effect, but we don't have much control over that. Retiree health, again, we've got caps on that now, which really helps us, but obviously as healthcare costs go up, until people reach those caps, we have some additional liability. And then an issue that a number of department heads have raised, and I know the council's aware of, is we've done a lot of wonderful things in the city over the last 25 years with infrastructure, but some of that stuff is 20 years old now, and we have to figure out how we're going to maintain it. And so we have to look at that as part of our long-term strategy from the finance perspective. So I think all in all, this is a very positive report. We're not going to be recommending radical changes to the budget in June, but I think we can make some adjustments based upon council direction, and hopefully the next few years we'll continue to see the improvement.
So, Mr. Kristoff.
Yeah, Phil, with, you look around the state and and we talk to other city council people and things like that, and their PERS increases, they're very concerned about. They can't make the payments. Healthcare costs, trying to do some things, but I mean, at the same time, they're struggling. Retiree health is sort of in the same mindset. We have a program where we have been putting something into those accounts to try to offset some of the, the costs that'll eventually be incurred. But I mean, at the same time, are we going to increase any of those, we'll say, minor contributions?
Well, I think let me start with your first comment about retiree health. We have put a significant amount of money based upon this council's direction. We have fully funded our OPEB every single year since it's been required. So we have a significant amount of money now in there. Unfortunately, I remember talking to Evelyn, our prior finance director, when she wanted to take the money out and put it in a pillow because we were losing money during the downturn in the market. Now we're obviously gaining that money back. The problem is the healthcare costs have caused us to have, we've put approximately
$10 million.
$10 million into our fund. We had a 21 or $22 million liability, but that liability's gone up to 30 million.
Sure.
So we're shrinking it, but we're not shrinking it fast. We're hoping that these caps will now allow us to start catching up. So I think we're in good ground, and we plan on budgeting the full fund based upon the direction we've had from council.
Okay.
Healthcare costs we've capped in virtually every group in the city. So unfortunately, it's the employees now that are, and that's why the PERS decision today was so important.
No, it was. Sure.
Because they're paying the brunt of it now. The increases are going to them. And with regard to the 5 years of PERS, in talking to the county, and I think we're in good shape to be able to withstand it. At the finance directors' meetings statewide, the general message is if you can get through the next 6 years with these PERS increases, the cities that can are going to be fine. And I think we're in good shape to be able to do it if we continue to be careful in what we provide as far as salaries and benefits.
Well, in talking with some of the other council folks, they can't.
There are going to be cities that are going to go bankrupt, is the prediction.
They can't. They can't make it. And I just wanted to, and I knew that and I told them, I said, we haven't made the full payment, but at the same time, we've made enough of that payment to get the attention of PERS or whoever it is, that we're making an effort. And I was just wondering, is that effort going to be increased? But, as long as like you say, I think that if we can make it the next 5 years, we'll be in pretty decent shape.
Yeah. And just to answer that question, every 2 years, we have to have an actuary look at our payment. And and our payment has gone up. It's gone up from $1 million to over $2 million.
Right.
So, and we've made the full payment. We're hoping that it will not continue to go up based upon the caps, but we will find out when we get the actuary report here in a few weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson.
Yeah, Phil, do we, on the property tax assumption, it's 2%. Do you foresee it's a blip coming? Because I know there's quite a delay in when we actually see property taxes based on property values. But, we've had a lot of reappraisals and over the last downturn. But do you expect to see in the 2014, 2015, start to see an increase of that?
I don't see a huge, here's the challenge we face in the city. There's two types of increases, Prop 13 and Prop 8. Prop 13 this year will be 0.453, so not even 0.5%. The max is 2, so we're not going to get much increase. The problem we have in Prop 8 property is property that it can go way down, it can go way up, but that's only if it doesn't change ownership. And so many of our houses that lost value ended up being foreclosed on, and there's new owners and they have a new base. They can only go up Prop 13. So that's what our challenge is, versus a Placer County where somebody may have had $1 million home that went down to 500,000. Well, they didn't move out of the home and it's now back at $1 million. They're complaining because their property tax is going way up. Well, our, $300,000 home that went to 150 got foreclosed on and got reestablished at 150. It can only go up. So we're not expecting a huge increase in that. We'll have some Prop 8 properties, and the economy will turn around where we'll get 2%, but I don't see that turning around quickly, to be honest.
All right, thanks.
Sandine?
You mentioned wanting some direction from us or from council. For me, as a newcomer, I feel that anything that focuses on the policy direction and also the management agenda, stating the obvious, but I think anything that aligns with that pushes us forward is what I would like to see come back to us, if that's helpful.
That is helpful.
Yeah, I think the streetcar piece, it's time. And when we first scoped it out and set its allocation in Measure K, we thought we would be spending the money earlier. But we also have a lot more we will need to spend a lot more than we had intended back then. I think it was an $80 million project when we scoped that. Now it's a bigger project, both in terms of connecting to more places in Sacramento, which was a value that was articulated by a lot of our residents. Now it goes to Midtown, as an example, and to the train station and other locations. And we're already contemplating because of the maintenance facility, the potential partial activation of a second line. And so, and we have real momentum, and we know much more having one federal money, regional money, and City of Sacramento money, as well as our own into the pot. So we have a clearer sense about what that picture looks like. And it's more than we had originally kind of just pulled out of the air when we did our Measure K allocation. So we need to start making that happen and preparing start to be depositing money into that account and be prepared to hold back and then eventually dial back those programs, the various programs that had been able to capture those funds while we were waiting and doing this development work. So I think that is the direction we have to go. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to meet our own commitments that we've made on streetcar.
Well, we will show you exactly what that looks like then in either May or beginning of June.
And the U.S. Department of Transportation has been supportive of the project, but in the back of their minds, the worry they have, having seen enough cities not prepare financially to do it, is that we won't be able to deliver. And so showing that we have done, we've created an account and we're depositing money in it will be an important good faith step for them to see, no, this is not one of the cities that just has an idea and a plan, and then when rubber hits the road, they can't deliver. That we don't have the last dollar yet, but we are. They should invest because we are making an actual investment today in the project's success. So.
Yeah, I too would take a pretty conservative approach. I think the approach that you're proposing, it really sounds reasonable, sounds good. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out in June. But
all right, thank you, Mr. Right. Item 12 then is consideration of Resolution 14-7 regarding intention to establish a community facilities district in the Bridge District to levy a special tax to pay for certain services and to establish an appropriations limit for the community facilities district. Mr. Blumberg.
So tonight we're coming before you to ask you to initiate the formation of CFDR. It would be the new maintenance district in the Bridge District. And it would be formed under the Mello-Roos Act in 1982. And it would be one of our alpha districts, again, our CFDs that are A, B, C, D, and so on. And on property owners' tax bills, it usually shows up as LNL A, B, C. So just if you want to reference that. But again, it's a way that the city has to have new development pay for certain maintenance items, usually landscaping, lighting, drainage, things like that. And it involves a imposition or levy of a special tax on the regular tax bill. And we do this throughout the city. We have 14 existing CFDs, maintenance CFDs. And one of the key documents that you have in your packet is the rate and method of apportionment. And so that's the document that kind of governs the maintenance CFD. And so it tells you how we come up with the allocation of costs of maintenance to different types of land uses. So one thing I point out is that we did hand out a memo, correction memo. We have a red line copy of the RMA there where we did add some language that would allow us to come up with a methodology for allocating costs to certain land uses in the Bridge District that don't fit the typical type. So if you're looking at commercial land uses like a hotel or an office building or retail, that's in the RMA right now, but it may be in the future there's some type of land use like a visitor destination where we have to come up with some special methodology. But for the most part, the RMA is pretty straightforward. We're looking at a base budget of about $214,000 for maintenance in the district to start out, and then over time, while we have that cost being allocated to vacant land, you can see, and I think it's attachment 2 to the RMA, that there are varying factors for developed land tax to come in as properties are developed. This is just initiation of the process. We're going to be coming back to you June 4th with the public hearing on the resolution of formation. We'll ask you to adopt the RMA at that time and also set the direction on the election. Now, we will have to go through an election of qualified voters in the district, and so that will require a threshold of 2/3 approval by voters in the district. And so we anticipate we'd be doing that in September, and that if all goes well, we'd be coming back to the City Council in October and have you adopt a resolution, adopt the ordinance that would put the special tax in place. So that completes staff's presentation.
All right, other questions for Mr. Lundberg? All right, then is there any discussion?
I'll make a
Mr.
comment. I mean,
Christoph?
I'm glad to see we're moving forward on these IFDs. And I'll be looking forward to see if we can put those in place in other parts of our city. But, I mean, when we lost the agency, something needed to, I'm not going to say take its place, but at the same time, at least put some kind of structure together so that we could start to find funds in order to put the infrastructure in place that we needed to eventually have. So I'm glad to see we're moving forward on this.
So the IFD will be the next item. This is the traditional CFD, same presenter though, right? So, all right, any other discussion on this item? Is there a motion on item 12?
I'll move the recommended action.
13, right?
No, we're in 12, that's what I was saying.
Oh.
Item number 12?
Yeah, all right, so Sandine moves, and Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson seconds that item 12, the recommended action be taken. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. That brings us to item 13, which is consideration of Resolution 14-1, declaring an intention to establish Infrastructure Financing District Number 1, Bridge District, to finance the construction and/or acquisition of capital improvements in the Bridge District area, fixing the time and place for a public hearing on the proposed infrastructure financing plan, and authorizing certain other actions related thereto. Mr. Laurel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council members. I'll just be introducing this item, giving a little background before turning it back over to Paul, so he probably could have just stayed up here. But earlier tonight, at our employee awards reception, the mayor described the turmoil that was caused by the loss of redevelopment, and more importantly, our city's response to that cataclysmic event. Redevelopment tax increment in West Sacramento played the most important role in financing some of the infrastructure improvements and planning efforts that made the city's economic and physical transformation possible over the last 25 years. And perhaps nowhere was that more evident than in the Bridge District, both in terms of investments that got us to where we are today in that area, but also looking ahead to how we would support vertical development under a public-private financing plan to build additional infrastructure. So we're talking about the parking garages, park amenities, roads, streetcar lines, all the future investments of infrastructure that will realize the full potential of the Bridge District. So when the rug was pulled from under us with the loss of redevelopment by the state legislature, we were forced to figure out a new way to do the old job of redevelopment, and again, perhaps nowhere more importantly than in the Bridge District. You'll remember the mayor's Pro-West SAC committee and the follow-up to that, the Community Investment Action Plan that was adopted in May 2012 as our game plan for the post-redevelopment environment. And the central recommendation in that plan was a then little-known tax increment tool buried in the state code called infrastructure financing districts. At the time we looked at that tool, we pinpointed a small but essential fix that would require legislation to form IFDs in former redevelopment areas like the Bridge District. We supported initial legislative efforts to make that happen, and simultaneously we pursued a legal strategy to restore the redevelopment tax increment funding that was committed to the Bridge District. And for 2 years, those efforts resulted in nothing but frustration, as you're all very well aware. But fast forward to February of 2014, and thanks to a lot of work by the mayor and other people in this room, the governor signed AB 471, a bill by Tony Atkins that removed that obstacle standing in the way of forming IFDs in former redevelopment areas. So as we laid out in the community investment plan, the IFD tool is really seen as the long-term companion to the funding that the council worked to secure through Measure G. And we're currently we're working on a strategy for how the IFD will apply more broadly throughout the city, so to address your point, Councilmember Christoph. But tonight, and as for reasons Paul will point out, but mainly due to expediency, tonight we're recommending moving ahead with an initial IFD for the Bridge District. So tonight's the first action for the first IFD in West Sacramento, but it's a significant step forward in restoring the financing plan for the Bridge District and for advancing the Community Investment Action Plan. So Paul's doing a great job of heading a staff team, also a city attorney's office and an economic consultant to complete the IFD formation process. We're going to use that process as a model for future IFDs as we look at where those areas and what approaches we might use for future IFDs. And we're also closely watching and keenly interested in the governor's budget trailer proposal pertaining to IFDs that would make some additional improvements to that tool. On April 30th, I'll be bringing back a report on state legislation. We'll include more detail on that proposal in that report. But we are looking at how that process could be adapted to what we're doing for the Bridge District as we go along. So with that, I'll turn it over to Paul, and at the end of the presentation, we'll both be available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, now looking at the IFD formation, it's kind of a hybrid. It has characteristics of the Mello-Roos Act in terms of the way you form it, and then it's like redevelopment in terms of how you calculate the revenues that come back to you. And so in some way it's pretty straightforward, and that's why the schedule that you see in your packet, it's going to kind of mirror the one for CFDR, kind of the same major steps with tonight's resolution of intent, following up on June 4th with a resolution of formation, an election, and then finally, if all goes well, we'll have the district in place by October. But you know, what's kind of interesting about it, and I'll just emphasize again, is that we've got property tax increment that is going to be generated with the city as a taxing entity getting about 50% of each dollar that's generated in the Bridge District. And last year, we did do calculations of how much tax increment would be generated by build-out of Bridge District. So it became a good model to have as kind of our first IFD. It also will rely on the set of infrastructure that we have in the infrastructure plan for the Bridge District and the types of public facilities to be constructed. We have cost estimates, we've got phasing, so we have a lot of the raw material to put into the plan. Now, say something about the plan. The key document that we'll be bringing back to you on June 4th is the infrastructure financing plan. And so that key document has not only how much tax increment we think will generate, but it also has other things like fiscal impact. You know, what's the impact of developing the area on the general fund? How will you maintain those improvements that you are constructing with the IFD? So it is actually, for us, a very interesting document because we've never done one. And as Aaron said, you know, we're also tracking some changes in the law that could occur as a result of the governor's trailer bill. And so there are changes that may be in effect during our adoption process where we could take advantage of some of those changes. For example, one thing that's a big change is being able to go from a 30-year term to a 45-year term. So most of your assessed valuation is going to be out in those later years. So tremendous financial benefit of that if it should occur. Also, the voter threshold would change under the current proposal from 2/3 vote to 55%. And again, one of the key values of having the IFD in place is the ability to not only pay for pay-as-you-go type expenses, but to be able to bond. And so one thing that will be in the infrastructure financing plan is an estimate of when we can bond and how much we can bond. And so the law is very specific. You have to describe in some detail about the bondability of the district. Again, tonight we're asking you to approve Resolution 14-1, and we did hand out a correction memo on that one. And so it just it fixes the date of June 4th rather than the May date for the public hearing. And also we had a revised boundary map. There were 3 parcels that we included within the IFD that have potential to be developed and to create value in the district. So you have that corrected map before you.
Are there questions for staff? No. Discussion? It's a good work. I mean, this is a kind of anticlimactic, given the amount of effort, the Herculean effort that's gotten us to this point. But this is incredibly important. We are the only place really that's doing this at this scale in the state. But this is a lot of pieces coming together on every dimension in every part of the city. Once the governor agreed to let the law change, essentially just for us in the state. I mean, it applies statewide, just to be clear. But really, because of the case that we had been made over 2 years, this became possible, and staff had been preparing to go in this direction. But this is what's needed, and it's the right solution. So I'm definitely supportive of moving forward with this tonight.
I'm very supportive. I'd make the motion that council approve Resolution 14-1.
All right.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Item 14 is presentation by Stonelock District Holdings LLC on its vision for the Stonelock property. Mr. Robinson and Ms. Hamilton. And we'll simply note the action on item 13 reflected the revision as proposed by the city manager. So.
Good evening. The purpose of the item tonight is to allow Stonelock District Holdings to present their vision for the Stonelock property. But before they do that, I wanted to take just a brief minute and provide some background on the project. As the council is aware, the Stonelock property is a 210-acre Successor agency-owned development site that's located just south of the Barge Canal. In 2007, the Redevelopment Agency entered into an exclusive negotiating agreement with the Cordish Company to develop the site. As the agreement with Cordish was still not complete in 2011, when redevelopment dissolution became a huge concern for the city, the site was optioned to the Port of West Sacramento, which in turn assigned the option to Stonelock District Holdings LLC, of which the Cordish Company and Wynn Homes are members. Pursuant to the option assignment agreement, the developer is required to make a presentation to the council regarding its vision for the site. This presentation is a prerequisite for submitting a development agreement application. We're asking that the council hear the presentation from Stonelock District Holdings and provide the developer with any comments or feedback regarding its vision for the site. So with that, I'll turn it over to Stonelock District Holdings.
All right, and what are the instructions in terms of the time frame that you've given to the developer for the presentation?
They were asked to keep it to 20 minutes.
Okay, all right. Seriously. Thanks. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been a long while, and as you know, we've been mired in a couple of years of Department of Finance issues. I want to thank the city manager and the staff for the input they provided during that time period, and we couldn't be more grateful to have had our agreement be deemed a valid agreement. We're really excited today to show you the plans. Our plans are both aspirational and they're achievable in the near future. The plans have something for everyone: day and nighttime activities. Water obviously is the star of the show, with the way we see the district as being the southern anchor of the West Sacramento waterfront, with the Bridge District being the northern. The project is mixed use. It's designed to integrate the streetcar system, and it also has regional entertainment, which we plan to program over 100 days of the year. I'd like to, for the benefit of some of the new council members and the public, I'd like to do a very brief history of our company. Oh, sorry. A company is a 100-year-old company. We are family-owned. We've been fortunate enough to win 7 ULI awards, more than any other development company in the country. We're self-funded, so we don't rely on outside money for our sources. This is a picture of the waterfront in Baltimore, which is something we took the lead in redeveloping. We also have a casino gaming division. Last year, we finished the construction of a $450 million casino, which is the third largest in the country, which we largely built out of our own cash resources. This is a picture that's been included because it represents our management division. So unlike other development companies, we own and operate our own clubs and restaurants. We have over 10,000 employees. This right here is an image of Maker's Mark, which is one of the brands that we have. We also are partners with companies like Budweiser, PBR, NASCAR, and other national brands. And the other brands we create on our own, much to reflect the community. Another aspect that sets us apart from other development companies is we also manage our own entertainment. This is a picture that we have in Kansas City. We're at the 50 million mark in terms of visitors a year from our entertainment. We're vertically integrated. We book all of our own concerts. And we own 12 different venues. I know time is short, so at this point I'd like to introduce Mike Wynn, who's going to talk about Wynn Communities, our partner. Thank you.
Thanks, Port. We're on a budget, so as Port just indicated, we're really proud to be here tonight. It's an exciting opportunity to finally share our vision for Stonelock. It's a bold vision. Your city, West Sacramento, enjoys a great reputation, a venerable reputation for community planning and economic development, and we're proud going forward to be partners there. This Cordish-Wynn collaboration also intends to bring forward our best work to date, not repeating what we've done despite its magnificence, both here and around the country, but really something that's best suited for West Sacramento. And now, at the risk of being slightly bit shameless, a little about Wynn Communities. And I know the monitors in front of you may be better than the big screen, but our company's 30 years old, 30 plus. We've got a legacy within this region in particular for evolving into a master plan developer originally from a home building background with deep local knowledge, genuine community involvement, and really a pretty impressive track record of creating integrated and complex communities. We conservatively estimate that more than 100,000 folks live in homes or communities that we've been involved in. Two examples here, like this happens to be a club in the Natomas area that is a prime feature of some of our major planned communities, clubhouses that are for fitness, yoga, community association meetings, telecommuting, childcare, a number of uses, including pools and recreation. This just happens to be another one in a community under construction in El Dorado Hills, the Blackstone Club. All of these facilities, like I mentioned, are publicly managed, or I'm sorry, professionally managed and fully staffed. And I think it's a demonstration, too, if I might, of suggesting that we pay particular attention and a lot of detail to both the public infrastructure, the hard in the ground and under the street infrastructure, but also the soft amenities that make a neighborhood great places to live. Bear in mind, these communities are not blessed with a stone lock setting along the Sacramento River, overlooking the river, and I think you'll see in the presentation soon to follow that we're going to take full advantage of that setting. Quite frankly, based on the intensive design efforts that have gone underway recently, we feel that the best is yet to come right here in West Sacramento, and that as you'll see, the clubhouse we intend to feature here will really be everyone's backyard on the river. Let me explain briefly, because I know we're under time constraint how tonight's presentation will work. Brian Jensek will follow me. He's with HOK in San Francisco. He's going to share with you the community design work, or the framework vision, the big picture, if you will, describing how all the pieces come together, how Stonelock integrates and takes advantage of its context within West Sacramento. It's a remarkable 210-acre site. He's going to also touch on the aspirational features that Port just alluded to, and then spend a little time on the pragmatic how, why, when, and where elements to how this can actually happen. His graphics, you'll see, will give you a much better understanding of what we're talking about. It's really going to be the place where West Sacramento residents and their visitors can gather, play, work, shop, entertain, all in a manner that complements the city's existing residents. That's probably worth repeating, if I might. This council's vision and the core principles that you established back in '07 for this area, for a healthy, sustainable, urban, diverse place to live, reside, thrive, have been taken to heart. And I think we'll see that tonight. We've got riverfront restaurants, streetcar access, dynamic urban residences very near the retail center. And then we're also respecting, as the densities graduate down toward the Riva, the Monticello, the Gateway, and the Arlington neighborhoods, respect for our neighbors and the immediate community surrounding us. And then after Brian's presentation, Rich Burns, who's here from Baltimore, the Director of Architecture and Planning from the Cordish Company, he's going to drill down more deeply into what I think is the most exciting aspect of Stonelock, and that's the Lock District, the retail hub between the two bridges, Jefferson Boulevard Bridge and the under construction McGowan Bridge, connecting to Pioneer Bluffs and on to the Bridge District. So I just want to close by saying that each of us is very proud to be here tonight. We think we're a uniquely qualified team, but we want to prove it to you, and we're ready and able for the hard work ahead. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Brian Jensek.
He was sweating because he's thinking, how are the two of us going to do all of what you just said in the time that's remaining?
Wait till you see. All right, thank you, Mike. Good evening. We're blessed at Stonelock, building on a really strong planning foundation that we inherited with a lot of great planning work that came before us. The general plan, the Southport Framework Plan, Parks and Rec, and many ongoing plans as well that identified a series of principles that Mike just walked through. In addition, we know that open space is going to be critical to this project, so we also spent a lot of time understanding how our project would fit into the larger Parks and Rec vision for West Sacramento, specifically along the riverfront. Back in 2007, when we began the planning process, one of the first major issues we identified was the importance of the site reconnecting the community to the river. extending the riverfront deep into the community, how our site, how our project can actually act as a connector for the surrounding communities to the riverfront, and how we could use our parks and our urban street grid to also further strengthen those connections, distribute parks along the way as stepping stones to connect the community back to the water. A series of public meetings were held, during which 120 public comments were collected that identified 3 districts that we'll refer to in the presentation. To the west, the Canal District, along the canal, the Lock District between the 2 major roadways and the bridges, and then the Parks District to the east that's embraced by a large riverfront park system. During the community meeting process, various programming ideas were collected to help us understand where these open spaces should be distributed, their relative size, how they would be used. And this was a very helpful process to help us understand exactly what the character should be for the various zones of the site. We're sort of graduating from more water-bound uses to the west, where we have a controlled water level along the canal, performance uses, celebratory uses at the corner, neighborhood uses at our core, adjacent the other residential neighborhoods that surround us, and maybe more ecological uses to the southeast, where we have existing stands of trees. The site has a strong opinion about how it should be developed. We very much intend to develop a very site-specific plan, finely tailored to this site. The west, we've got the shoreline access, the lock at the center, which we think is an incredible asset. There's many question marks about the lock, as we all know, but we think there's a lot there. Views at the corner to downtown, and fill material at the center of the site that'll help us lift up to the levee level in some areas to get us up there. So we're not just, we're close to the river, but we can't see the river, and help us get up in elevation. Our street grid, we expect it to be very urban. The extension of the parkway and the future streetcar is only going to strengthen that. Next, we began to look at connections to the surrounding community. How could we engage the surrounding developments in real and meaningful ways? These white lines represent those connections, and these would ultimately become our street, bicycle, and pedestrian network, becoming essentially our framework. We spend a lot of time getting to know the surrounding communities, and we'll spend more time doing so, looking for how we can connect in, ultimately creating destination parks at the other end of those connections, as well as neighborhood parks along the way. Once we had our framework in place, we began to think about land use and density. And as Mike mentioned, the graduation from higher density to lower density to the south, we find ourselves at around 18 dwelling units per acre on the high side of the midpoint between the Pioneer Bluff District to the north and Southport to the south. We will also distribute density. We're thinking strategically from north to south across our site to respect our surrounding communities, as well as provide higher density toward the north, where we have the great riverfront and views. Those ideas collapse together into this overall master plan. Some quick images about character: Canal District to the west, where we really envision a district, residential, higher density toward the water, where we can engage the water with piers, boat access. It's very much about living on the water. The Lock District, who Rich Burns, who will follow me, will talk more about our active, urban, vibrant core, essentially the heart of the project. Here's some images that give a sense for what the Canal District might look like as it steps down to the canal, boat access, and so forth. The Parks District, residential character, it's strong street grid, it's about connections to the riverfront. And then finally, a riverfront park network that will unite the 3 districts together. And this is an image of the character toward the confluence at the corner. Very much a celebratory space, very urban in nature. It's about connecting visually to downtown as well as the surrounding community. Just briefly on phasing, we want to engage the riverfront very much early on with a first phase park, the clubhouse, as Mike described, that will put eyes immediately on the park and activate the park, residential adjacent along this new corridor, along the parkway, and then Rich will get into the potential phase 1 over here of the Lock District. So at this point, I'd like to hand it over to Rich to talk more about the Lock District. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I recognize I'm on borrowed time here, so I apologize beforehand. I want to take some time really talk about the Lock District. Brian has talked about the urban design principles that generated the master plan. I'm going to focus on the Lock District and our vision to create a high-value, high-energy entertainment district. Our experience with projects like the Power and Light District in Kansas City indicates that successful urban entertainment districts have certain urban attributes of strong street grid, negotiable urban blocks that are no more than 200 feet in length, activated sidewalks with energized street-level retail, landscaping that defines street edges, exuberant environmental graphics and an exuberant art program. Our experience also tells us that successful entertainment districts can be the catalyst for future development. This project is One Light. It's adjacent to our Power and Light District in Kansas City. We have a groundbreaking ceremony on Monday. It represents 300 residential units adjacent to our project. This is one of many residential projects that are now beginning to be developed adjacent to our entertainment district. I urge you all, if you have the time, to read Tuesday's edition of the Kansas City Star, in which they credited the renaissance of downtown Kansas City to our Power and Light District. They see it as the catalyst for the some 400 residential units that have been built, planned, or under construction in downtown Kansas City in the last year and a half. I think this is a true axiom of build it right and they will come. Our experience also tells us that to be successful, urban entertainment districts must be centered on strong, actively programmed open spaces. The Romans called this the agora. It's the urban living room. This is a space where toddlers can play, adults can stroll, a place for flea markets, antique car shows, flower markets, music festivals, family outdoor movie night. To be successful, these urban rooms must be programmed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The Cordish Company has an in-house group that programs all their outdoor urban rooms in their entertainment districts. This is a critical component of making urban entertainment districts successful. Our recently opened Phase 1 of Ballpark Village in St. Louis employs all these important urban attributes. Strong urban grid, buildings fronting streets, active ground level uses, exuberant graphics, and a central open space. In this case, our open space is the historic infield of Busch Stadium 1, which we've now called the Field of Dreams, and that's where all the events for our district will occur. Oops. A key component of our districts is a live venue. Essentially, it's a collection of restaurants, bars, focused on a large video wall and stage. If you will, it's an interactive performance venue. Now, these live venues can either be enclosed, like the Ballpark Village venue you see here in St. Louis, or our Philly live venue, or they can be open, like our venue at 4th Street Live in Louisville, our venue at Power and Light District in Kansas City, or our venue at the Power and Light project in Baltimore. In addition to a strong street grid and open space, entertainment districts must celebrate the uniqueness of place, whether it's a waterfront, a canal, or locks, or it's local merchants, local sports. They must be reflective in these entertainment districts to be successful. Entertainment districts need not be totally architectural centric. Components can be more kinetic. This is a non-Cordish project, but I wanted to show it because it basically utilizes shipping containers to accommodate retail, kids' playgrounds, and performance space and art galleries. Now that we've identified the urban ingredients to cook a successful entertainment district, let's look at the main entree and vision for Stonelock. We see the project evolving in phases. First phase, oops, let me go back. First phase would be along the lock. Would represent about 150 to 200,000 square feet of retail. And then it would also be centered around a major open space, if you will, the urban room. The second phase would be along the Southern Road, which would represent a mixed-use projects of retail and residential. Talk about the first phase components of the project, which would include a 50,000 to 60,000 square foot cinema, which you see to the left, strategically placed restaurants and clubs, entertainment, retail, lifestyle, and recreational retail, a market building for small local specialty food vendors, and to the left, an interactive recreation-oriented venue or an indoor live venue. Our urban room, or the agora, if you will, as we focus into the town center, includes a container park to the left by the movie theater, an interactive water feature as we move to the right, a bandstand and stage for performances on the green, a market building highlighting local food merchants, and a formal fountain and public art place. This represents the urban room of our project. These are some recent renderings of the project. This is looking from the cinema down to the container park, the children's playground, as you see there in the foreground. This is a typical retail along the street, encouraging each retailer to kind of identify and uniquely brand their facade and their building. This is a view from the bandstand to the interactive water park. This is a view of the green and the bandstand and the stage. View of the market building with local food merchants. And finally, a view of the entire urban room from the formal water fountain and art park all the way down to the cinema marquee. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mike.
But our time is up.
30 seconds.
All right.
Thanks, Rich. I think you'll agree the Lock District is going to be quite an entertainment draw. Truly a great place. As you can imagine, though, Stone Lock is going to be a complicated undertaking, and to make that happen, we're going to need your support. Working with your craft to create a robust community outreach effort, a viable financing plan, get through the requisite entitlements and the CEQA process, is going to require collaboration of every step in the way. In that respect, this group is really ready to run. I hope we gave you that impression tonight. It's for real, and we'd be looking for your green light. We hustled through the presentation, I know, but we hope we've been clear that Stone Lock will be unlike anything in the region. We enthusiastically welcomed your clear challenge tonight. The city's got great aspirations for this riverfront site, and it should. We hope we meet those. The whole team here tonight, Tom, Port, Rich, George is here, Paul Muser, are available to answer any questions or take any feedback you might have. We welcome that, and we thank you again for your time.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's return to the council. And the staff has anything further at this point? Okay. Well, I was impressed by the presentation. We were all involved at some point in one way or another in the original conception of this project, including Councilmember Sandine as a member of the Planning Commission. And this piece of property and this planning process occurs in a very specific context. So I just want to underscore it because this is a space that is both urban and suburban. But as we were contemplating the original RFP for this project, it was in the context of the revision of our overall plan for Southport. Less so our plan for the Pioneer Bluffs area, just because that was a longer-term project. We knew we were intending to do, higher density, activated, more urban scale waterfront development there, but we didn't have as much of a plan. It wasn't as imminent as it is today, thanks to the bridge project and some other developments that have occurred since that time. But I think one thing to remember about that moment and that endures is that we were absolutely not trying to add housing units. That was not in any way, shape, or form an objective. And in fact, we were trying to avoid it to the maximum extent possible, because our framework plan, as we were I don't want to say negotiations, but in the broad community discussion about the Southport framework plan, we're building a plan that largely was already self-contained in terms of housing units. So this was, although it has an urban character to it, unlike other urban areas, we're not trying to put as many people as possible into Southport. And the infrastructure is not designed, the traffic capacity is not designed for that, and the residents weren't asking for that. There was a lot of debate about whether we should go over a cap on the total number of units in Southport. So it's just, for me, that's an important, we're not in that phase right now in that process, so it's not as front and center for us, but that was the planning context of this. What caused Cordish to be selected, and we had a lot of proposals to come from lots of other development teams, including several in the region. Cordish really stood out because of their track record in the non-residential side, right? So it was all the stuff that we saw this evening, particularly around entertainment and, at a large scale. At a large scale that could feel both urban and suburban sort of simultaneously and help make that transition and that match work. And most of the council, I don't think the Planning Commission did, but most of the council had seen Cordish projects in Baltimore and elsewhere in person. We spent a lot of time with the Cordish company leadership, and we're convinced that they were the right team to be able to deliver that. So again, not selected for their housing expertise, and actually not selected for sort of basic retail, because the other thing that we were not trying to do was to adopt sort of an Natomas Elk Grove approach. Oh, it's 5 blocks. We need another shopping center. 5 blocks. We need another shopping center. 5 blocks. We definitely were not trying to do that. Both because we're trying to create a real town center in the center, just down the street in Southport, around the actual Southport Town Center, but to cluster there. But also, it has been a consistent policy of the city for decades to not over retail Southport. Because part of what we're trying to do in terms of our population and economic growth was to provide the support to sustain the economy of the whole city, including the retail of this part of our downtown and the rest of the community as well. So we did not want to be creating retail for the sake of retail. And it's a key distinction from what you may hear when we do community workshops, because in community workshops people are like, I want more places to shop, and we want that too, but in a planned way that makes sense for the needs of the whole community. So to me, those two were really, they were important, and they remain important to me now. The entertainment piece of it was what was distinctive. We could make a place here that was different, and that residents of Southport and the rest of the city could say, you know what? I will put up with 16 more cars being on the street at the same time as me, because there's going to be this fantastic, multi-venue entertainment, project right there. That's worth it, right? In the same way that it was worth it in order to have Target and the Nugget and the Eatery, all right? So that's a choice I'm willing to make. But not to add people just to add people, and so that has to animate our work. It's still important, and I can tell that you've made the effort in this presentation to try to have some respect for that original process. But I just want to underscore that, because at least for me, any housing is only there to make the magic happen, not for its own purpose. And the same thing with sort of basic retail. It's there to make the big amenity happen, or the big amenities, both the entertainment side and the recreation side as well. And so it's important as animating, but it will also be very important when we get to the stage of development agreements and everything else around what the deliverables are, what the scheduling is. And so, so for example, somebody will come forward and say, okay, phase 1 is housing, phase 2 is housing, phase 3 is housing, phase 4 is housing, and once everything else is done, then we'll build the stuff that you really want. I'm not voting for that. Right? So if we could make given all the challenges and financing, everything that Mr. Wynn described, that we would all have to work on together. I'm committed to it, but there's a road I only want to go down if we can be confident that we are delivering in the early stages the real amenity that was the objective of this whole project, really in the first place. I'm not against the housing at all. I think we are trying to create great places to live and to support the overall community and our schools and everything else. But it's not the objective. And the same thing with the base retail. The other piece that's changed, though, is the Pioneer Bluffs and the bridge, which was just a hope at the time that we did the RFP, and certainly even the extension to Village Parkway. That's very real now, and by the time we would begin construction on this project, it would be open, and the transition of the Pioneer Bluffs district as well. And so, and it's another one of those elements that's hard to convey in a community workshop, is not what would you want to do on this piece of property today, but assume that the city is able to achieve its general plan vision in Pioneer Bluffs, and you have a high-intensity urban area that extends all the way down to this project. Then what should this project really be all about? And so I can see you've paid some attention to that, but I do think that's definitely, as we get into the weeds on the projects, we have to pay close attention to that. It's a transition, but it's more than it's more than that, and it will be simultaneously part of both, and anchoring in some ways anchoring the Pioneer Bluffs with a water feature, essentially in the part of the Pioneer Bluffs, as opposed to thinking of this district exclusively as the northern corner of Southport. To really, as I think your overall map it shows that, but also that it's the bottom bowl of the Pioneer Bluff as well, and we need to conceive of it in that way in the planning. So. Ms. Andine, the Mayor Pro Tem always goes last.
Thank you. I think we have a really exciting opportunity ahead. It was nice very nice tonight to have a preview and kind of an introduction about the concepts. Before tonight, I wrote notes to myself about I wanted to hear what you had to say and kind of test it against what I was dreaming about. And I wrote to myself, high aspirations, vibrant waterfront, recreational amenities, accessibility, a destination, youthfulness, activity. And I think some of that has definitely captured your imagination, and that's what's so wonderful about the opportunity at this property. As the mayor mentioned, though, I think phasing is very important to understand that and to see how that will come forward. And then I want to encourage even more so the connection to the water. When we were looking in and I know that sometimes computer diagramming doesn't help necessarily when you're looking at just partial two-dimensional, but I think something showing access to the water as the program, or as it comes forward to us. So that would just be helpful to me. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Joe Hennessy.
Yeah, I think the direction of this is good, and there's been a couple things that have happened since we did the Southport Framework Plan and some of the planning early on in the 90s. One thing is that the mayor mentioned the bridge is now a reality, but the other issue is a streetcar, and I don't even think that was even considered back then when we were looking at the traffic and how to activate this. And the other thing that's happened is the whole riverfront master plan. So we're now looking at this district, yes, it's part of Southport, yes, it's part of the southern end of the bridge district, but it's also part of a regional development, a regional amenity both sides of the river, kind of a twin city relationship that's developing. We've got a Broadway bridge now that's being planned. We've got an ice street being planned. So the whole area is going to be more and more part of the urban fabric of both West Sac and Sacramento. And I think I think appropriately densities should be different now than they were back when we were planning this, because if you have potentially a streetcar line coming down, and which is going to take years to get in place, but that time I think the market will be ready to absorb this, which gets into the phasing a little bit. But we can take advantage of that transit to move people in and out of there and connect them to the rest of the Sacramento region or downtown, midtown, with 3 or 4 tram stops or train stops and streetcar stops. And to have a point of entertainment or a point of excitement down at that end would help draw people in there, because I think the current thinking in this type of urban planning is, it used to be rooftops, and the development retail would follow, but in this type of planning, it's more the entertainment, having a place for people to live, then the folks will move there, particularly when we're looking at diversifying the economy, getting new, different folks in here, getting away from the state government as the sole guiding source of our economy. We want to try to have these types of areas where people will live. And frankly, they're not really going to care if they're in West Sac or if there's a streetcar line. For them, it's just another stop. So the destination, the city, is not that important. But You know, I think my colleagues are right in terms of the phasing. To do things earlier would be public access into these areas, so people can, you know, bike paths and pedestrian paths, so folks can start moving into that area and seeing it develop as it comes through, to really start to make the feel more like a waterfront region that's connected. And so I think that's, I think those are the main, at least at this point. I think it's more visioning at this point. I know there's a sentiment in there, and I'm not sure if, you know, what the retail would, the market would be for that, but I think the concept would be to have some type of business or some kind of anchor there. Because, you know, with the streetcar is also going to connect us even further to K Street and what's going on there too. So there's some market dynamics that I don't think we're talking about at this point, but I think it's a good vision. I think, you know, the use of the water, I think, is excellent. I think more the textures that you're showing, I think, would be important. The freshness of at least the designs look fresh, and I think it would be a good thing for this region.
Christoph.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty excited about the project. I mean, I think that there's certainly a lot of potential, and I just love the site. I think this site is absolutely, the potential for this site is remarkable. One thing I want to make sure happens, and that is, I have always envisioned that this site would become a destination point. This site would, I could be coming from South Lake Tahoe going to San Francisco, and I would want to make a left-hand turn off the bridge to come and visit this site. That's how important it is to me. There has to be something there that has that kind of draw and attraction. I'm not so sure a movie theater is going to be that kind of thing. But at the same time, there's something that I think needs to happen. One of the things that I thought of many years ago, and that is, at this particular site, there could be a botanical garden. The botanical garden could be a joint proposition between UCD and developers and whatever it is, because of the horticultural aspect of UCD and what they do. I mean, they grow so many things and they do so many things. I think that there could be something there, and that could really be a big benefit. It could be a draw. I mean, I've seen other botanical gardens in other cities, and they draw a lot of people. I mean, they draw lots and lots of people from, I know people that go up to Vancouver just to go to the botanical garden and so forth. But I do think that that's one of the things that could make that a destination point. One of the other things I thought that would be really sort of interesting, I don't know if we could do it, but I think restaurants on top of the locks would be a great idea. I think that's something that would really set the tone for that restaurant. People sitting out eating and looking over and seeing if they find a fish down there or whatever. I mean, there's so many things that can happen. So, I mean, I think that some of those things are possible. I don't know what the Corps of Engineers or anybody would do about the locks, but at the same time, I think it may be something that as we go a next step further, we can start to at least explore the possibilities. One of the things I want to make sure is this project goes to the Planning Commission. It will go to the Planning Commission, won't it?
Yes.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
it does require planning entitlements, and it will
Okay.
go through the various commissions.
Okay. The other part of this is, I think we need to make sure we do our homework too. And that is, I remember when the first proposal came forward, Arlington Oaks people were not happy. There were a number of concerned people that they wanted to make sure that there was something there. I forgot what it is. I forgot what it was. But they did not want condos, townhouses, homes, or whatever it was built up against their neighborhood.
And I don't know how it is for Riva and some of the others. I would have to assume some of those feelings are there. So we as a staff, I think we're going to have to do our homework to go out and to make sure we knock on their doors, talk to them, make sure they're comfortable. I know the development community will do that, but we need to make sure that they're comfortable, and that's when phasing, I think, really becomes very important. You know, where is the phasing of the amenities that the neighborhood wants to have? When do they get to go in prior to just a bunch of houses being built, or townhouses, or condos, or whatever it is? So I think it's going to be very important for that phasing. And one of the other things I think we better make sure we do, and that is, we had some agreements with homeowners and with residents of West Sacramento pertaining to density. And we signed some agreements that there would only be so much density within the Southport portion of our city. We have a number of other communities planned. And so I want to make sure that we connect all the dots as far as David Stroud's, as far as PAC, or whoever has that now, as far as Liberty. I think we need to make sure that we do not violate that agreement. Or if we are going to violate it, we do it consciously, and we know what is being built and what we're getting for whatever is built. I guess those are really the comments. I'll look very closely at the development agreement to make sure that, that's going to be the agreement that really drives everything. And so I, like the mayor, it's not that I have to have a bunch of houses, but at the same time, from a fiscal perspective, I know I have to have some. Because, it's going to take some of that type of development in order to make the project pencil out. But how much and when it happens is going to be critical for me, because if I can have, the movie theater and the botanical garden constructed up front along with the clubhouse. I think the clubhouse is a very nice and necessary amenity, but at the same time, it doesn't do anything for me. We have a clubhouse out at the boathouse, and it's nice. I've used it, and it's very nice, but at the same time, it's not the thing that sells me on the project itself. And so I just think those kinds of things are going to be important, and those are the things that I will be looking at and sort of focusing in on when we do this. And if I know this council like I think I do, there's going to be a lot of other things, because they're certainly going to go through this thing with I don't want to say a fine-tooth comb, but they certainly want to make those amenities, and your staff has just done yeoman's work on this. You've done a lot of really good things, and so I'm just looking forward to working with the development community, our staff, and see if we can make it work. I don't know if it can, but we can give it a shot.
Yeah, I actually don't think we're not a fine-tooth comb council, but just very clear about the core principles and the objectives, and then very sober. If those can't be achieved, we don't want a project. Right? We are not one of the councils that we just want to build to build. And I think the conversation that we've had really, for me at least, highlights very significantly this question around what is the orientation of this place. And so the clubhouse, I completely agree. Clubhouse has a value in a very particular neighborhood or subdivision. That's not what we're going for here. I mean, that's not, it's bigger than that. It's supposed to be an amenity for the larger community. And so this destination notion is important. At the same time, we have to be careful. I mean, if somebody were to say, what we want to put there is a Bass Pro Shop, which 15 years ago I said, that's a great idea. But now, uses that are simply destinations, right, that you drive over, you get off the freeway onto Jefferson, which is already impacted, you drive down to this site, you go use something for 2 hours, and then you get back on Jefferson, come back on our freeway on ramp and congest that. That's not value either. And so it really has to be something that is a whole place, right? Okay, this is just somewhere that you would go, and there's a lot of stuff there that might happen when you go, right? I'm going to go because there's a band playing, or because I know there's always some kind of something interesting there, or it's right on the river, and we're going to go spend the afternoon. But it's a regional scale amenity that is a place that's more than just any single use. And so, because we definitely don't need a drive-in, drive-out sort of destination, not at that location. It's just too difficult. But I also thought the comments about when this in the interim period when we've been working on some initial visions of this pre-redevelopment and trying to figure this out, it was disappointing because I think the developer had come back and said, well, we can't make all this other stuff work. It's gonna, it's a lot farther away from the urban core of the region than the Power and Light District and some of the other projects that Cordish has been involved in. So we need to shift to a predominantly housing strategy that has a nice retail component. And for me, it caused a lot of loss of enthusiasm and not opposition, but just okay, that's not where I want to go. But what's happening in the Pioneer Bluffs district, and as the Mayor Pro Tem and as Councilmember Sandy Bell said, this property has suddenly gotten much closer to the core of the region than it was even 6 years ago. I mean, not in a literal sense, but the connectivity of the streetcar, of the bridge itself, and of the Broadway Bridge means, I mean, with the Broadway Bridge, it's like 6 blocks away from Sacramento. And it is just a few stops on the streetcar. And so thinking about it in that way, it now starts to feel like a more Cordish appropriate space than it did before. So I think as we all have to sort through exactly how local, how regional, how destination, how much place this really is. Well, we don't, but the developers and our staff are going to have to work that through and test it with us and the commission and with other stakeholders in the community to really get that right, because it's a really interesting opportunity site, but it's also it's challenging because it doesn't fit it doesn't fit our neat, clean boxes that we usually have when we're doing either land use or some of these or the projects themselves. So. So I do you feel like you have sufficient feedback at the staff level from the presentation?
Yes, I believe so.
All right.
And this project will be working with the developer to make sure they comply as best as they can with Resolution 0663. I believe that's the agreement that Councilman Christoph was referring to.
Yeah, I think it was.
So this project, that resolution is still in effect, and this project will also have to have findings made pursuant to Resolution 0663.
So, but yes, but and I think as Mr. Christoph said, or implied, that resolution is a resolution of the council. It is not. It was not an executed contract with any third party that is legally enforceable in that way. So we follow that resolution because that resolution was not us doing something that we didn't want to do as part of some sort of legal instrument. The resolution was a way for us to clearly state that the concerns that were raised by that community group in particular were fully consistent with what our intentions were, and we were simply expressing what those intentions were more clearly in that resolution to accompany the work that was happening on the framework plan. Which isn't to say we run roughshod over it at all, but it means that the project itself doesn't have to comply. We have to determine how we want to proceed with it. And it gets back to this question of, okay, it wasn't about density, it was about the total number of units that we would ultimately permit in Southport at whatever densities. And so we simply have to make that judgment with the community. Okay, if this project were to require us to go over that number, is it worth it? Right? That's the fundamental question. Is it bringing something to the people of Southport and the whole city that is worth, taking that number up by whatever the additional units are. And that's a judgment that we have the full discretion and authority and responsibility to make ultimately. So I wouldn't start with saying to the project, be constrained by this. I would say, project, be aware of this, but give us the best project that matches up with the principles that have been described here. And then we will have to, with the community, figure out whether or not, how to reconcile that with what our expectations around forecasting were back in 2000 and whatever.
Well, I was thinking that maybe it could take it even a step further, and that would be, there are other projects that are out there that we don't have development agreements on. With Stroud's development, we do have a development agreement. So there's certain things that we have to adhere to. But I mean, Liberty, we don't. Parkside or whatever that other one is further out there, I'm not sure what the name of it is now. We don't have one there now because they sold the properties.
That development agreement is still in effect. It was assigned,
is in place.
Yeah, it was assigned to the new owner of the property.
Okay. But I mean, there are others within the Southport area that this density agreement talked about, that we may be able to take 100 from here or 100 from there, whatever, if we can make it work. If that's what makes it work, and it's something that we want, then I think that that's something that can be looked at.
Okay.
Yep. But I would say, I think fundamentally that's going to be our responsibility and not the project needs to get us the best project possible, and we'll have to figure out the rest of it. I wouldn't put that on them. So. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks to the team. All right. So we'll have the DA up on the 30th.
Excuse me?
Sorry, little bad community development humor. All right. Okay, item 15 is presentation and discussion of ordinance 14-5, adding chapter 2.19 to the municipal code relating to electronic and paperless filing of Fair Political Practices Commission campaign disclosure statements.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Senior Deputy City Clerk and Premier Work Ethic Award winner Janet Chapin is going to give the presentation tonight.
Honorable Mayor and council members, as you know, campaign disclosure statements have been expanded to include a 24-hour filing period for contributions exceeding the amount allotted in our municipal code. The filing of those reports would normally be satisfied by either faxing, mailing, or hand delivery to the city clerk's office. Understandably, this filing requirement could potentially be quite burdensome for filers. To alleviate this burden, the city clerk's office is asking the council to review draft ordinance 14-5, which would allow electronic filing of campaign disclosure statements. Besides facilitating the 24 hours filing requirement, an electronic filing system would enable filers to submit any type of campaign disclosure statement without having to file the required 2 signed original statements to the city clerk's office, which entails staff time to redact, scan, and upload the documents for public access. Staff does recognize that requiring filers to file electronically is not acceptable to all. Therefore, the draft ordinance before you recommends the approval of an opt-in, opt-out program, thereby allowing filers to choose whether they want to file paper files or not. In conclusion, staff recommends that you consider this draft ordinance, provide any comments necessary for the successful implementation of filing statements online, and elect to move ordinance 14-5 through the next step of the adoption process.
Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson.
I think it's about time. Now, is this the same system Yolo uses, Yolo County?
No, it is not.
Okay. And this would do 700s and campaigns as well?
Correct. The current people that e-file the Form 700s would basically use their same passwords, et cetera. It will just be a different portal, but they'll be utilizing the same passwords. But if they don't want to, as far as if they're not 700 filers, then they would just do the campaign statements.
And would the clerk be able to distribute it to the different organizations like what happens now, or would it be just for city? only.
No, the e-file document would be consistent with what signature document.
All right. Okay.
Now, our legislators are going to adhere to this also, right?
They already do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there an amount, or is there something that triggers this, Janet? That would trigger the,
For your 24-hour statements?
yeah,
Well, that's what you discussed a couple of council meetings ago.
Right.
And that would be the 250 or 500, depending on what the contribution level is going on at the time of the election. And that's, I believe, 74 days prior. And then after that, it would, every time you guys went over $100, 16 days prior to the election. So this just
can the
facilitates those.
$100 figure go to like 250 or something? Because, I mean, it seems like that's just a,
I think we incorporated the two tiers, so instead of being $100 every single time, 90 days out, it'll only be 16 days out, because the 74 would cover the 250 or 500,
Okay.
if I'm understanding that correctly.
okay.
I mean, I think the proposal makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think we should be moving towards not an opt-in system for two reasons. One is it's more costly. The taxpayer should not be subsidizing folks who don't want to submit electronically. I mean, there's electronic submission of everything now. And it costs us more to have to process the paper and for somebody on staff to scan the document and then upload it themselves. So it's a burden to the taxpayer to not have it done electronically. And then second, it's much simpler for the public because the electronic system can automatically publish the information, so you can get much more rapid public awareness when a contribution of a larger amount has been made. But it kind of doesn't make sense if people are filing electronically, their contributions are disclosed earlier than those who are not filing electronically. So, I mean, I guess I don't know. I would prefer that we not have an opt-in, and whether there's some sort of phase period or something that we say in the ordinance, for the next election or something, and it's an opt-in, and then after that, it's mandatory. People can start to prepare. But I do think it makes sense for the system to work effectively and fairly for everyone, and for the taxpayers as well, that we go to a system that's all electronic.
Well, I think long-term, electronic filing is going to be the way it goes. I mean, you got campaign finance reform, and so, I mean, I think that long-term that's going to be the case. I mean, quite frankly, I like the opt-in thing. I mean, I'm not electronically plugged in as some of the other folks, but it just, that would be a real struggle for someone like myself. But, so I would like to, I could sit down and figure out the form and then send it in, but that instantaneous stuff, for me, it's a struggle, so I wouldn't care for that at all.
I mean, that's why a transition period, I think, does make some sense. I mean, the other advantage of the mandatory electronic is, I mean, if you've taken a look at the reports that we get by hand, not Mr. Christoph's, but many of them are incomplete and replete with errors, which you can assure does not happen with the electronic system. You can't hit submit until you actually entered in the address and the amount and the ID number and the zip code, all the required information. Whereas I know the city clerks are aware, in many cases, the paper copies folks file and they do not comply with the law. They say the name and the dollar figure and they're done, and that's not consistent with what the law requires. And so the electronic system allows for that to happen without the city clerk having to go and conduct an investigation or implement an enforcement action, which is a waste of taxpayer money as well. So, I mean, I get it. I think Mr. Christoph is not alone in the transition that's happening, but I do think the ordinance should anticipate and incentivize, something to make that transition occur, because it's both efficient and effective, but also fairer for all the candidates to be using the same system. So.
Mr. Mayor, we were just having a conversation with the city attorney here about the possibility of having the ordinance allow for the opt-in, opt-out provision for one election cycle, and then it could be phased out So the ordinance could be written so that it would sunset at a particular time.
Maybe 2 election cycles.
2 election cycles? Okay.
Yeah.
Including 2016, yeah. Mhm. Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson.
Yeah, I would agree that we probably should use an accelerated removal of opt-in. But in the meantime, have, I don't know what the interface looks like on this, so, obviously that's going to be a barrier if it's not understandable. But there may be some utility to having maybe a staff person assigned to help people do these things. I mean, he's done this with other county facilities and or state facilities that if you need help filling out the online form, and then maybe phase that person out as it becomes more common. But I think, it could be part of the candidate training too, to, how to use the website. And
And it already does that for me.
yeah, well, so.
Okay, any other comments? Is it new
Oh,
to
I'm
you?
I'm supportive of the phasing. When you have new technology, I think phasing it in over a period of time seems reasonable to me.
All right.
So do we want to consider the 2016 timeline? Incorporate that language into
The
the...
opt-in, maybe perhaps the opt-in would go away after the 2016
Correct.
election cycle?
Maybe one after that.
Showing his hand.
Oh, I don't know. I might get some training, so, okay.
All right. All right, you have sufficient direction? Council, thank you, Madam Clerk. This council calendar, Ms. Richardson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to point out a couple items on the calendar. On the 28th of April at 10 a.m., we're having going to have a ceremonial commencement of the demolition of the CEMEX silos. And also, staff is still continuing to work vigorously on the Fix 50 project, which begins on April 22nd.
General plan on
Oh, thank you. And then on the 28th, that same day on the 28th at 6:30, we're going to have the general plan land use scenarios workshop here in the Galleria. And that's going to be publicly noticed for the council and planning commission. So in the event that there's a majority of either one of those bodies who wants to attend, that's not going to pose a problem. Not on your calendar yet is on May 9th at 10 a.m. is the scheduled date for the urban farm groundbreaking that's going to take place. So more information will be forthcoming on that.
All right, any questions on the calendar? Thanks,
Pardon?
Ms. Richardson. City Manager report?
Well, Mayor and Council, thank you for your efforts in honoring the staff and the teams earlier this evening. As we speak, there's a couple of great teams that are emerging for this year's recognitions later this year. Carol mentioned the Fix 50. That project, the Caltrans project, starts on Tuesday. Our staff, Mike Lucan's done an incredible job. You approved the cooperative agreement in a consent item, I think it was number 7. For us to reimburse up to $750,000 for our local traffic control measures, and there's a great effort that's going on right now, including with changeable message signs to give people directions if they come through the city, the quickest way to get to downtown Sacramento. We also have camera installations for traffic control. Those are going online. You can go to our homepage today and see the cameras that are functioning so that at different intersections you can see traffic as you plan your route. We'll push that out with press releases beginning on Friday and through iLights and get that word out, just not to our residents but also to the media so that they can get quick access information on local streets. So it's a big effort. It's Public Works, Fire, Police, everybody has really jumped in here to mitigate this project that's not ours. The other effort that's going on, I want you to be aware of, is the rail car safety, particularly as it relates to crude oil. We've been in conference calls with Congresswoman Matsui, thinking what do we need at a local level to address the increased number of crude oil tankers that are being shipped through the entire Union Pacific corridor from the Bakken fields all the way to the refineries in the East Bay. We have a session at SACOG tomorrow with the other jurisdictions in the Sacramento region in terms of their best efforts in sharing information. Assemblymember Dickinson has an event tomorrow to announce legislation to give locals better notification of what's actually in those cars. He's doing that tomorrow, I believe, at 11 o'clock. Our plan is to come back on the April 30th meeting, give you an update on where we are and what kind of direction we would seek from you to deal with this issue.
Questions for the city manager? Mr.
Okay,
Christoph?
yeah, the, how is the Fix 50 project going to affect things that are after that, as far as allowing time for, you know, the certain things to happen? I mean, are we going to, is it, everything's just going to go on the times that are allotted, or are there going to be some adjustments to some times?
Well, Caltrans did respond to our request. They opened up additional lane on
Right.
Interstate 80, so as East Bay traffic from Davis that's going to, for instance, Rancho Cordova, Folsom, or even Lake Tahoe could use I-80 and not even get into West Sacramento. That's one thing that Caltrans did. The other big issue, we were asking them to push the project start date back until after school recessed. Rather than do that, they moved the project up. So that's why we've really had to scramble and get ready for April 22nd start date. So we're attempting to make sure our residents get real-time traffic information, and again, the media as well, so that they could provide our residents with information so that they could maybe decide not to leave home to work at that particular time, let traffic clear up, rather than get stuck in the middle of it.
And then in May, cap to cap, that's on the first week of May?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. The Fix 50 job that the city manager and Mr. Lucan and the whole team has been doing has been outstanding. I won't say this one that's actually happening because it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, it'll be a nightmare.
Yeah.
No one will believe how bad it could have been. But the amount of cooperation that you've leveraged from Caltrans, in addition to all of the internal planning and preparations, has been extraordinary, which it has to be, but appreciated. So. All right, city attorney report. All right, staff direction from members of the council. We have no future agenda item requests. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Go, Beverly.
I'll move to adjourn.
The specialist. All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Sandine and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson that the meeting be adjourned. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.